Fucking do it. I gotta make the video right now, ladies and gentlemen. This was I don't even know what the fuck just happened, ladies and gentlemen. I don't even know what the hell just happened, but it is what it is. Alabama survived South Carolina 27-25. Ladies and gentlemen, we are not a good football team. We're not. We're not a good at this current point, at this moment, we are not a good football team. South Carolina, tons of credit to you guys. You guys absolutely played your ass off. Sellers made two big mistakes. He made two big mistakes, and that was the fumble and he threw it in the back of the end zone. That third one, it was just a Hail Mary. Nobody was open down the field. Alabama sent a ton of pressure to roll it to the outside. Barely any time left to try to get your team in the field goal range. I actually blame that more on play design. That last drive for South Carolina, because guess what? If I would have just hit Alabama. I would have just hit Alabama underneath. They kept giving up the underneath open. I would have just kept hitting them underneath and try to get out of bounds. I have two plays. Worst case scenario, I have two plays. I can kneel the clock. But for the most part, I would just attack Alabama alongside the boundary on that last drive instead of just heaving it up and trying to go for it all in that particular situation, especially because they were giving up over 12, at least 12 yards of cushion. But it is what it is on that aspect. We're not a good football team. We're just not. We're undisciplined. These players, for the most part, they don't respond to the challenge. They don't respond to the challenge. I think that honestly, there are positions within this team that honestly, that position battles should still continue to go on. And I think the worst part about it, the coaching in terms of game management, clock management. I know no matter what you want to try to spin it, it's not good. It's not good. Point blank. Period. Kalen DeBoer, his game management is terrible. It's terrible. I can't tell you this enough. Kalen DeBoer single-handedly gave South Carolina 5 points. Because if we just would have ran the ball and instead of trying to attack and be more aggressive, guess what what would have freaking happened? We would have went into halftime 7-14. I'll give South Carolina that first touchdown because that's more on the defensive line. You got to try to get some pressure, especially if it's a 4-man rush. It's a long developing play. The wheel route was freed up. You're attacking a true freshman. They're going to score. It is what it is. That was just a well-developed play. It is what it is. Those mistakes happen. Can't really blame the defense for it. It happens. It is what it is. It's 7-14 at halftime if DeBoer simply would just ran off the clock. But instead, what he decides to do, he tries to be aggressive with 12 seconds left on the clock. Can't make the shit up. Jalen Milroe throws a horrible pick, horrible decision. Once again, Jalen Milroe reads one side of the field, makes a terrible decision by having a pick. And we're lucky that it wasn't a pick six. And it was just 3 points. But going back to that, the other points that happened was Milroe. Again, if we just would have ran the football in that particular drive, knowing that our offensive line is having a lot of trouble, we're backed up in our end zone, I'll just take the punt and trust my defense to try to get a 3 and out because I thought the defense, again, they gave up the touchdown that drive, but besides that drive, my defense has been playing really, really good. So I'm running the football, best case scenario, I get about a yard, maybe no gain, hell, even a tackle for loss. It is what it is. At least I'm backed up in my end zone. I'm going to pump the football, and I have one of the best punters in the country. I can get at least 40 yards off the punt, and we'll see what kind of happens here. The point is, though, I'm not giving South Carolina free points. Instead, what happens? They push the pocket. They push the pocket, especially because Parker Belsford got pushed at least 7-8 yards in the backfield. Jalen Milroe tries to climb up. Jalen Milroe doesn't climb up the pocket. He does this tendency where whenever there's pressure, whether if it's backside pressure or he's getting or that front or that center is getting pushed, and now that pocket at least in the front is starting to collapse. Milroe decides to roll to his right like he normally does because that's Jalen Milroe's tendency is rolling to the right, where there's Kennard who's playing spy, getting a free rush on the quarterback, and all of a sudden it's a safety. So that's 5 points that should have been avoidable. It's 5 points that going into halftime, it's 7-14. Yes, South, it's 7-14, and you have the momentum. All that shit could have been avoided. But speaking of that, this rushing attack is ass. And I'm just starting, and we just have to accept it the way it is. This rushing attack is not good, ladies and gentlemen. Jam Miller and Justice Haynes, they're 4-star backs. Justice Haynes was a 5-star back. I'm not seeing it from Justice Haynes. Justice Haynes is slow. He is slow. He is slow, and he doesn't have a good burst. He doesn't really have a good burst. Now he's a patient back. He's a patient back. He has really, really good vision. He can read his blocks, but he's not fast enough. And then Jam Miller is not a patient back. He is I hit the hole in goal type of back. Doesn't read the blocks extremely well. And again, both running backs love to try to hit it to the outside instead of trying to rush it to the inside whenever there's a hole even created. So there's that. Then you have the situation with your offensive line. Jaden Roberts got benched today. I don't know if any of you guys noticed that. Jaden Roberts got benched. Jaden Roberts has been playing terrible the last couple weeks. He's been playing terrible. And now, and even then, like, we got to go back to South Florida. We got to be honest. He played terrible in that South Florida game. We got to be honest. In the Wisconsin game, it wasn't his best game. I thought that he was one of the weak links either. He's had a bad season. And so you saw Van Mark coming into the game, and even though I think Van Mark helped in pass rushing sets, Van Mark is not going to be that much of an upgrade either. So we're weak, and so right now we are weak at one of the guard spots. Elijah Pritchard got his lunch money taken today by Kennard. Dylan Stewart did a tremendous job against Caden Proctor. Like, this was one of the, against Caden Proctor. Like, this was just one of those games, guys, where I thought that Nick Sheridan once again got away from what was working, which was running the football in the first half. South Carolina made their adjustments. And Bama couldn't respond to the challenge until we got later into the football game, when we once again started to run the football on that particular drive. This was Jalen Milroe's worst game of the year. Not even a discussion. He looked like old Jalen Milroe from last year. Again, Jalen, when everyone kept saying he was a first-round quarterback, I didn't make any videos agreeing with Mel Kiper and agreeing with Todd McShay and agreeing with all these pro experts saying that Jalen Milroe is going to be the first quarterback taken. I shut my mouth because I know that he's not the first pick. I know he's not the first pick. Is he a first-round sort of talent? He may be, because he does have the physical intangibles, obviously, that a lot of NFL teams nowadays wants in a quarterback. And then he has improved his short to intermediate game. Statistically, he definitely has proven it. However, he does have bad tendencies which stop him from progressing and taking the next step. Number one, he's a half-read guy he's a half-read quarterback that sometimes goes to one-read mode. Like, that's not going to cut it, man. Like, that's not going to cut it, simply put as that. He forces the ball sometimes a lot into double coverage. He gets confused a lot, especially when the defense is trying to disguise their particular coverage. Like, there are tendencies about him that he has to work on in order for him to be a first-round guy. But, I mean, it's pretty apparent, man, that Jalen Milroe is improved, but he's not there. He's not at that level of a Jaden Daniels, I'll even say like a Bo Nix, a Caleb Williams, right? I'm just talking about from this year's quarterback class. Yeah, even a Drake May. He's not at that level. So it is what it is when it comes to that. Defensively, missed assignments, missed tackling. And the crazy part is this wasn't on the defense. I'm not going to completely blame the defense because we were able to get better in terms of generating a four-man rush. Like, this is one of the better games I think Alabama played in terms of generating pressure and collapsing the pocket and forcing Sellers to go outside. The problem is, though, we had no spy on Sellers for the majority of the game, and again, he was able to break away when we did play containment. He was able to break away from containment very easily. Why? Because missed tackles. Another game of missed tackles, another game of missed assignments. Another game where, again, this young secondary, and Damani Jackson was hurt, so you saw a little bit of it. He came back in the game and played. But you saw, once again, how young this secondary actually is. Jahad Campbell and Deontay Lawson, especially in pass coverage sets, have been, let's be honest, they've been bad. They have been bad when it comes to pass coverage sets. I mean, really, there's not that much for me to say. We just played sloppy football. Again, but I can deal with my secondary being inexperienced. I can deal with the fact that Sellers was able to be efficient again, he didn't do too much. He chose what the defense gave him. You know, he was able to pick apart the defense. Defense showed him particular looks. He took what the defense gave him. He played within the system. He played within structure. And you can't ask for not that much for a quarterback like Sellers. But what I can definitely say that's on the defense is missed tackles. Like, tackling has been piss poor. Another week of missed tackles. And I'm telling you, man, like, this is a defense that's extremely young. You're the 4-2-5. That's your base defense. But again, we went to a 4-3. We were in a 3-3-5 at times in the nickels and playing a nickel. Like, we weren't always in a 4-2-5. We just played terribly. I can't even really blame all too much on Kane Womack, even though yes, he deserves. You're the defensive coordinator, and you're the defensive coordinator. But I saw coaches yelling at players. And players weren't responding. I just think that players simply just were not responding to the challenge. We played down to our competition. That's just point blank, period. We played down to our competition. We saw the sample size that we can play great against Georgia. We saw that in the first half. But so far, the last couple weeks, we have simply played down to our competition. South Carolina, again, they're not a Vanderbilt offense, but they use a little bit of a Vanderbilt formula by just running the football, running a lot of inside zone, taking the underneath. I mean, they simply ran a Vanderbilt sort of formula in that second half, and they were able to sustain a long 8-minute drive. Another game where we let an 8-9-minute drive happen in a football game. It's just a lot of crap, ladies and gentlemen, that happened in this game that quite honestly, I'm tired of it. I'm just tired of it. We are 4-1, but we easily could be 3-2. We easily can be 3-2. I think easily could be 3-2. And South Carolina's defense is good. That defensive line is good. That secondary is vastly underrated, especially both of their outside corners. Their offense is garbage. Like, South Carolina's offense is trash. Their offensive line is not really, really good. The receivers, for the most part, are talented, but they're not that good. And Sellers is a mobile quarterback who doesn't really have a lot of upside. Raheem Sanders is probably the only player that I love on that offense. Maybe Nicholas Harvard, but that's because of College Football 25 and how athletic a freak he was, and you saw how he was able to make a big play alongside the boundary when he just heaved it up to Nicholas Harvard 1-on-1 against Damani Jackson. But another game, ladies and gentlemen, where we play down to our competition. We play like shit. You play like shit, this is the result you're going to get. And I don't know, man. I mean, our playoff hopes are alive, but I mean, so far, the last couple weeks, we're not a good football team. Like, the product that you saw the last couple weeks, tell me that we're a good football team. Tell me. I want people to sit up here and call me a fair weather fan, and you know who you are. I want people to go here and tell me that I'm spoiled and all. I don't even tell me that. But let's be honest. The last couple weeks, have we looked like a good football team? And the answer is no. We have not looked like a good football team. We got bailed out today. Special teams play like ass. Offensively was the weak point of the team, and that's a bad thing because your defense, really for the entirety of the season, your defense has not been the backbone. I don't give a shit what stats say. We got to figure it out. We got to figure out an identity. But I talked about this on Coach Sean's show. I talked about this with Ty Hayes. We have a cultural issue. And until we get that fixed, we're going to keep being in these games where we're struggling against mediocre competition. So we're 4-1 today. We enjoy the win, but quite frankly, man, I'm not feeling good so far. Now, again, if we would have lost this game, the playoffs is done. I don't give a shit if you go 10-2. You're not making the playoffs, losing to Vanderbilt in South Carolina. So we escaped it, but I don't know. We'll see, man. It seems like every game is going to be a fight until we establish an identity, and not just from what we do on the field, but what we do off the field. We got to fix the culture. And until we fix that culture, this is the result we're going to get.